Thank you for having me at today's event. And Sergey, thank you very much for an excellent analytical piece, as usual. Very, very good piece of work. If I could get a copy, I would really appreciate it. I'm not going to have a presentation. I just want to make a few comments on the potential, on the risks, on the opportunities, and where IFC sees potential for investments. I don't want to repeat the numbers that Sergey already mentioned about the impact that Ukrainian agribusiness sector had after the massive Russian invasion. But one of the impacts that we are seeing is Ukraine's ability to export less volume because of the logistical costs, because of the Green Deal, which is, vulnerable. It is extended every 3 months, and every time there's a question. Because of the problems at the border, because of the changing markets. So lots of things that are causing us to think strategically that we need to be exporting less volume for bigger value. And a very obvious idea then is, okay, we got to get into agro-processing. And that's a great thing to do, especially that Ukraine has already demonstrated many times in many subsectors its ability to be producing more value-added products. We are one of the best companies in terms of transferring plant protein into feed and then poultry. We have one of the most competitive poultry productions globally. We also demonstrated our ability, and I don't want to take away from Alexei, my client, we also demonstrated our ability to build from scratch when we can grow tomatoes and then we process tomatoes into tomato paste and tomato powder. And we are exporting to very sophisticated markets. I'm sure Alexei is going to be talking about it. We've been traditionally taking beetroot and producing sugar out of it. That's a traditional business for Ukraine. Sunflower to oil, this has been sort of done artificially in a way. And that is the example that is now being quoted very often. See, we introduced export duties on sunflower, and that caused the development of the sunflower processing industry. Yes and no. And that's actually sometimes not a very good example to follow. This was a very specific case. And the sunflower production, if you look at it, and I certainly don't pretend to be an agricultural person, but what I'm hearing from my colleagues and from other people in the industry, they're saying sunflower is very special because yes, you can efficiently do two products, which is oil and meal. And for these two products, you have different markets. So in a way, it is a peculiar case. And using that case, extrapolating it on all the other products is probably not the right thing to do. Because at some point, there were some scary discussions within Ukraine about restrictive measures, about imposing export duties on grain. And this is what caused a lot of concern with my colleagues with the World Bank and IFC. Because restrictive measures are bad. They go against the EU, but most importantly, they present a threat to the global security. So things like that need to be studied carefully rather than just simply saying, if we go from grain to flour, it's more value add, we're going to be happy. Because there must be reasons, and I certainly don't pretend to know them, but other people do. And I'm trying to explore why hasn't Ukraine moved from grain exports to flour exports? And there are several reasons that have been identified, but I think the best explanation I received from a German farmer who told me there is a reason why nature created grain in that form, because you basically export flour, which is protected by the shell. And if you try to export flour without the shell, then you get into all sorts of troubles. So, again, not pretending to be an expert, the message that I'm trying to deliver is that things need to be studied carefully in each particular case. And there are a couple of things to look at. There are things to look at what we can process for exports, especially exports to Europe. That's a new opportunity, and I completely agree with other speakers. There are things to look at for import substitution, because there is no reason why Ukraine should be importing honey. I'm sorry. Then there is also things to look at cost efficiency of production. So all of these parameters need to be taken into account. And where we see opportunities is still in converting, and we are very much in agreement with other experts. There's a very good study by McKinsey that I'm going to quote, because where they see the opportunities is in meat production, basically converting, again, plant protein into meat protein, in amino acids, starch, and biofuels. We also see a lot of opportunities in similar spaces. Before the war, the massive phase of the war, we did a study on the dairy potential. Because if you look at Ukraine, Ukraine should be able to produce very efficient dairy products. The question is which products, which markets? And this is precisely what we were trying to figure out, because traditionally we were producing cheese for the Russian market. That's been closed long ago. From milk, we can produce either cheese or butter or milk products, or maybe the way to go is to extract something more sophisticated. At some point, there was an idea by Campina, Friesland Campina, wanted to build a large facility to produce whey, because there was a lot of demand for whey, but somehow they couldn't. They couldn't organize the supply of whey from the smaller dairy producers. Things like that, whey or other very sophisticated products that could be extracted from milk. At that point, our consultants identified an opportunity for $150 to $200 million investment in the dairy sector, vertically integrated. It's difficult to imagine that someone is going to invest this kind of money now, because it's a long-term investment, especially if you build the farms around it. But that should not be excluded going forward. This is something where Ukraine has an opportunity. There is also an opportunity in consolidating the smaller family farms, which are sometimes more efficient. I know cooperatives has been tried, and the success has been mixed, but maybe this is where one should be looking at as well in the dairy space. The other area is horticulture. Sergey, you haven't mentioned that actually in the year 2014, each 12th bottle of apple juice in the US was made out of Ukrainian concentrate. Ukraine used to export between 90 and 100 million tons of apple concentrate. And there's no reason why we cannot do it again or expand it. There is also no reason why we cannot go into pectin production. And that's in fact what TBI Fruit was doing before the war. They were building a pectin production facility in Ukraine and also in Poland. There's a lot of growth of berries. And again, it's a funny thing that the frozen berries that we get in our supermarkets very often come from Poland or even from Finland. But sometimes these are actually Ukrainian berries. They were just transported in bulk to Poland, frozen in Poland, then transported to Finland, and then from Finland came to Ukraine. There are some good margins that could be made on berries growth, but there are even better margins that one can make in freezing those berries or making some processing of these berries. And there was also a case in Vinica where the Austrian company Agrana was doing precisely that. Again, a lot of opportunities in the horticulture space, leaving the tomatoes for Alexei. Yeah, that's also horticulture. New area of biofuel. There were several facilities in biogas There's also the first facility for bioethanol that was announced recently. There was a lot of future there. One word of caution again, there were some attempts to go into what is called technical plants in order to produce biofuel. IFC is of the opinion that Ukrainian soil is so good and the Ukrainian climate is so good that we should be growing things to eat, and biofuels should be produced from waste. We also have a lot of waste. It's just a question of putting facilities, and I know there are a lot of thinking with the Ukrainian agricultural producers in terms of how to put together facilities for biofuel production. A lot of opportunities there as well. There are also small attempts to go into more sophisticated stuff like soy protein concentrate, soy protein isolate, lysine, gluten, starch from potatoes, starch from corn. Very, very small steps, very small facilities are being put together, mostly by smaller Ukrainian producers. But Ukraine has potential to go into these, and these products would be in demand globally. There are markets for these products. It's just a question of identifying these markets. The nutrition habits are changing, so there's going to be a lot more consumption of these products globally, and so that's a potential for Ukraine as well. Bottlenecks, we have a lot. I'm going to name some of them. There is an issue in European trust in Ukrainian products, but some companies dealt with it, and I hope Alexei will be telling you how his company has achieved it, that they have trust from European markets, from Japanese markets, and from other markets. There are issues with traceability. There are issues with following the Green Deal. There are issues with border crossing. And in fact, one of the things IFC is now trying to address is how to harmonize the documentation between Europe and Ukraine for exports of agricultural commodities, and hopefully to be able to digitalize it. That's where we're looking. For value-add processing, irrigation is key. And this is another area where Ukraine will need a lot of support from the donors, but also from the private sector. And again, one word of caution, before the war, there was an attempt to use irrigation for growing corn and wheat. We believe that if you're irrigating, then it's probably because of the costs of irrigation, it is probably makes a lot more sense to produce something more value add, like AGRI-Fusion is doing. And last but not least, investment.
Yeah.
That's
just
what's
to
needed.
Complete, because I'm just looking at the timing, and that's why
Yeah,
I just see that we are running
last
out.
but not least, it's investment, and here we are. It's us, it's our colleagues from EBRD. We're all ready to help the sector go into and explore all these areas. We have approval from our board to go up to $2 billion of funding. So we're ready to start discussing these projects even now. Thank you very much.